Awaken your spirit chosen ones. The future doesn't announce itself. It leaks through patterns long before anyone believes it. There are people walking around right now whose way of thinking doesn't fit the timeline the rest of the world is operating on. Not because they're mystical, gifted, or chosen, but because their minds process reality in a way that feels premature. Conversations feel slow, reactions feel delayed, outcomes feel obvious long before they happen. And when those outcomes finally arrive, people look around in confusion, trying to remember who already saw it coming. Here's the part that makes this unsettling. Intelligence researchers have found that some individuals don't just think faster, they collapse steps. Their brains compress complex cause and effect chains into fewer mental moves, which creates the illusion of prediction. To observers, it looks like foresight. To the person experiencing it, it just feels like basic pattern recognition firing earlier than expected. No crystal ball, no prophecy, just a mind refusing to wait for permission to connect the dots. That's why people get uncomfortable around this level of thinking. It doesn't argue loudly. It doesn't dramatize itself. It quietly arrives at conclusions while everyone else is still emotionally negotiating the premise. You'll notice it in meetings where someone says nothing for 10 minutes and then drops a sentence that makes the room go silent. Not because it was flashy, but because it landed too accurately, too soon. And yes, there's a slightly funny side to this. When your predictions keep aging well, people stop saying, "How did you know?" and start saying things like, "Okay, that's scary," or "You think way too much," or the classic nervous laugh followed by, "Bro, are you from the future or something?" As if intelligence on this level must have violated a time travel agreement. This video isn't about being smarter than everyone else. It's about understanding why certain minds feel out of place in the present moment, why they're often misunderstood, quietly doubted, and occasionally joked about as if they don't belong to now. Because when your thinking arrives early, the world doesn't applaud it. It hesitates, and then tries to catch up. Number 1, you see outcomes before people see intentions. Most people move through life reacting to what's loud and obvious. They listen to what others say, watch what they do, and take things at face value. You don't. Your mind quietly skips ahead. While others are focused on explanations, emotions, and surface details, you're already tracking direction. Not the story being told, but where the story is inevitably going. That difference changes everything. When someone talks, you're not absorbed by their confidence or their excuses. You're listening for consistency. You notice what doesn't add up, what's missing, what's being avoided. From that, outcomes start forming on their own. You don't sit down and try to predict. It just clicks. Like watching a stone roll downhill and knowing exactly where it will land, even while others argue about who pushed it. This is why your reactions often feel out of sync with the room. People think you're pessimistic, detached, or thinking too far ahead. In reality, you're just not emotionally attached to the present moment. You understand that intentions are flexible, but consequences are stubborn. People can change their minds, justify their actions, or rewrite their motives. Outcomes don't care about any of that. You also don't need things to fully fall apart before you disengage. When patterns start pointing toward collapse, you adjust early. That makes people uncomfortable. They want drama, proof, and visible damage before they accept reality. You don't wait for the crash to admit the road was broken. What makes this ability unsettling is how quiet it is. You're not dramatic about it. You're not waving flags or saying, "I told you so." You just step back, change course, or stop investing energy. And later, when events unfold exactly as expected, people suddenly remember your silence. To them, it feels unnatural, like you skipped a chapter they were still emotionally reading. But the truth is simpler and sharper. You pay attention to direction, not noise. And once you learn to see where things are headed, Staying for the full performance stops making sense. Number 2, you don't store facts, you store structures. Most people think intelligence is about remembering things, names, dates, formulas, trivia. They pile them up like trophies, thinking knowledge is measured in the volume of what they can recall. You don't operate that way. Your mind doesn't clutter itself with details for the sake of details. Instead, it compresses everything into frameworks, into patterns, into structures that can be rebuilt at will. That's why you can explain, solve, or predict something without ever having memorized it exactly. When a problem appears, you don't search your memory for the right answer. You scan your internal blueprint and reconstruct the solution. That's why what comes out of your mouth often seems effortless, or to others, almost eerie. They assume you remembered it because they can't see the scaffolding behind your reasoning. But your mind is thinking like an architect, not a library. Every new piece of information doesn't just fill space. It finds its place inside a living system that already knows how things connect. This also explains why you adapt so fast. Rules change, details shift, contexts evolve. It doesn't throw you off. You don't cling to the old facts. You adjust the structure, and the facts fall into line. It's why you can appear several steps ahead in a conversation, in a project, or in life. People are still memorizing the terrain while you're already redesigning the map. The unsettling part for others is subtle. They hear you speak, see your decisions, and assume there's something unnatural about your mind. It's not unnatural, it's structural. While they rely on accumulation, you rely on organization. That difference makes you feel out of sync with most people, because they are measuring intelligence with volume while you're moving with clarity. The brilliance of this is quiet, almost invisible, but devastatingly effective. While others are trying to remember, you're already reconstructing, analyzing, and predicting. And when the outcome aligns perfectly with your silent calculation, it looks like you're operating on a different plane entirely. That's because, in a way, you are. Not because you're smarter, but because your mind works like a machine built to see connections instead of collecting clutter. Number 3, you notice invisible constraints before visible problems. Most people wait for trouble to announce itself with noise, drama, or chaos. A project falls behind, a plan collapses, a conversation erupts, and only then do they scramble to react. You don't operate that way. You see the invisible limits long before they materialize. While everyone else is distracted by what's happening on the surface, your mind is tracking the hidden forces that quietly shape outcomes. Incentives, unspoken rules, weak points in systems, human habits. These are what determine the future, and you notice them instinctively. You understand that problems rarely appear out of nowhere. They're born in the gaps, the unseen corners where people assume nothing is happening. You spot the pressure points, the subtle tensions, the quiet contradictions, and your brain lights up with all the potential consequences. That's why your decisions and warnings often seem premature or alarmist. To others, you're pointing at nothing. To you, you're pointing at the fault lines already forming under the surface. This ability makes you strategic in a way that feels unnatural to most. You don't waste time fixing visible problems. By the time something explodes into view, you've already moved, adapted, or corrected the trajectory. That calm, preemptive precision looks almost prescient. People call it intuition or genius, but it's simply noticing the rules no one else is paying attention to. It also changes how you interact with people. You see motives, pressures, and constraints they don't recognize, and you adjust accordingly. That makes your social moves subtle but incredibly effective. Others react to consequences. You act on causes. That gap creates a sense of mystery, sometimes awe, sometimes unease. The quiet power of this skill is that it rarely announces itself. It doesn't brag. It doesn't scream, "I saw it coming." It only shows results. And when those results unfold exactly as predicted, it leaves people wondering how someone could have known. The truth is simple. You didn't predict the problem. You noticed the forces that were already in motion and acted while everyone else was still looking for signs. That's what makes this level of intelligence feel almost unfair, because it operates in a dimension most people never realize exists. Number 4. Your thinking skips steps people emotionally depend on. Most people navigate the world with invisible training wheels attached to their thoughts. They rely on comforting assumptions, social scripts, and what should happen to guide their decisions. Their reasoning follows familiar paths, even when those paths lead to mistakes, frustration, or blind spots. You don't do that. Your mind has a habit of bypassing these emotional shortcuts entirely. You go straight to the core of the problem, stripping away the padding that keeps most people comfortable. That makes your thinking faster, sharper, and often unsettling to anyone watching. This isn't about being reckless. It's about clarity. While others pause to rationalize, justify, or emotionally negotiate, you focus on the structural reality of a situation. The steps that people assume are necessary, the reassurance, the debate, the hesitation. You skip them because they don't change the outcome. You see the skeleton beneath the noise and act on it, while everyone else is still arguing with the flesh. That gap between your perception and theirs creates tension. People feel off balance because your conclusions arrive without the usual emotional signposts they expect. They can't follow the usual trail of reasoning, so they interpret your logic as too fast, too cold, or even unnatural. But the truth is, your mind simply doesn't need the extra padding. It works efficiently, mapping directly from cause to effect without stopping for emotional commentary. This ability also explains why your advice or insights often seem shocking at first but become undeniable over time. You don't sugarcoat or soften the edges to make people comfortable. You deliver the structure of reality as it is, not as they wish it to be. And while that can make others defensive or skeptical initially, results don't lie. Outcomes validate your process long before they validate theirs. The brilliance and the unease comes from your detachment from the expected steps. You're not thinking faster, you're thinking cleaner. The paths that others cling to for security are invisible to you. You move through the problem in fewer steps, with fewer illusions, and that efficiency creates a quiet authority that's impossible to ignore. People may struggle to follow, but they can't argue with the results. Number 5. You instinctively reverse engineer reality. Most people experience the world like it's a story being told to them. They watch events unfold, listen to explanations, and try to make sense of outcomes after the fact. You don't operate that way. Your mind works backward. Instead of asking what's happening, you ask what rules must exist for this to happen. You break situations down to their invisible mechanics, reconstructing the system piece by piece until the outcome is inevitable. It's not guesswork. It's logic stretched to its extreme, seeing the invisible framework that underpins everything. This kind of thinking gives you an edge that's hard to explain and harder to ignore. While others are tangled in details, emotions, or surface appearances, you strip it all away and expose the scaffolding beneath. People think you're predicting the future, but really, you're just reading the blueprint of reality. You notice what's missing, what contradicts, and what aligns perfectly, and from that, the path forward becomes obvious. To everyone else, it looks like foresight. To you, it's simply the only way the pieces could fit together. Reverse engineering reality also makes you exceptionally adaptable. Systems, people, circumstances. You can take any of them apart in your mind, understand the inner logic, and know exactly where to intervene. You don't just react to outcomes. You identify leverage points, anticipate friction, and position yourself where small moves create disproportionate results. That subtlety makes your actions seem almost uncanny, because the cause and effect relationships most people ignore are crystal clear to you. There's a quiet power in this process. It doesn't need applause or explanation. When outcomes align with your analysis, people are left in awe, wondering how you knew, while in reality you didn't predict. You deduced. You traced the invisible threads that connect cause to effect, unraveling the complexity everyone else mistakes for chaos. You're not ahead of time. You're simply seeing the rules behind time, moving with an understanding that feels like magic, but is just a mind trained to see reality from its foundations up. Number 6. You instinctively reverse engineer reality. Most people experience the world like it's a string of random events, reacting as things happen and trying to make sense of them afterward. You don't. Your mind naturally works in reverse. Instead of asking what is happening, you ask what rules must exist for this to happen. You break situations into their core components and trace the threads backward until everything clicks into place. This is not luck or intuition. It's a methodical deconstruction of reality, uncovering the mechanics that most people never even notice. This ability makes your thinking feel unsettling to others. While they get caught up in surface-level drama, emotions, or temporary distractions, you are already mapping the invisible architecture beneath it all. You see patterns in chaos, connections in contradictions, and inevitabilities in uncertainty. What looks like prediction to them is just your mind reading the rules and limitations that govern outcomes. You understand the why before anyone else has even fully grasped the what. Reverse engineering reality also gives you an extraordinary advantage in strategy. You don't just respond to events. You anticipate where pressure will build, which actions will cascade, and which paths lead to dead ends. Small moves from you often have disproportionate effects because you know exactly which elements will tip the system. People notice the results but cannot see the precision that made them possible. That makes your presence disorienting in conversations, projects, and decisions, because your solutions appear effortless while others are still stuck in the problem. The quiet power of this skill lies in its subtlety. You don't need to explain it, dramatize it, or validate it. When your conclusions unfold exactly as expected, people are left mystified, thinking you're operating outside the bounds of normal thinking. But the truth is simpler. You're not seeing the future. You're seeing the structure of reality, the rules beneath the surface, and the connections everyone else misses. You move within that framework, naturally exploiting clarity in a world still fumbling through noise. It's precise, elegant, and profoundly disarming, and it makes your intelligence feel almost otherworldly without ever being loud about it. Number 7. You predict behavior without moralizing it. Most people can't separate what is from what should be. When they analyze situations, their judgments are filtered through layers of morality, hope, and social expectation. They expect people to act right, fair, or reasonable. And when reality ignores those expectations, they're confused, frustrated, or shocked. You don't operate that way. You see behavior for what it is, not what it ought to be. You strip away judgment and look only at incentives, patterns, and probable actions. That detachment allows you to anticipate moves that everyone else misses, because your mind isn't distracted by the story people tell themselves about themselves. This approach makes your predictions feel eerily accurate. You don't root for an outcome, you don't hope for one, and you certainly don't assume fairness will intervene. You see cause and effect clearly. If someone has an incentive to act in a certain way, They will, and you don't need them to be good or honest for that to happen. Others are blindsided because they overlay moral expectations onto reality, expecting it to bend to values rather than consequences. You don't, and that's what sets your thinking apart. It also changes how people perceive you. Your insights often sound cold, even brutal, because you aren't cushioning reality with excuses or justifications. But the truth is, you're not cruel, you're precise. You recognize that outcomes are determined by actions, pressures, and context, not by ethical ideals. That clarity allows you to make decisions, plan strategies, or interpret social dynamics with a level of accuracy that seems almost impossible to those still trapped in moral filters. The power of predicting without moralizing is subtle but profound. It frees your mind from wishful thinking and emotional distortion. While others hesitate, argue, or rationalize, you see the path clearly and act accordingly. And when reality confirms your analysis, it feels inevitable, not because you're psychic, but because you understand human behavior as it truly is, stripped of sentiment, obligation, or fantasy. That kind of intelligence doesn't demand recognition, it simply works, and its results speak louder than anyone's moral assumptions ever could. Number 8. You sense second-order consequences instinctively. Most people focus on the obvious effects of their actions, what happens directly after a decision is made, or the immediate results of someone else's behavior. You don't. Your mind automatically jumps 2, 3, or even 4 steps ahead. You see not just what will happen, but what will happen because of what happens, and what will ripple from that. While others are reacting to events as they unfold, you're already tracing the chain of consequences that no one else is noticing and planning accordingly. This makes your thinking feel almost unfair. Small decisions that seem trivial to most people are immediately loaded with significance in your mind. You can anticipate friction, unexpected alliances, unintended outcomes, and cascading failures before anyone else even recognizes a problem exists. That ability to operate in layers of cause and effect makes your intuition feel prophetic, but it's not magic. It's a disciplined awareness of how systems and humans interact, amplified to a level most people never reach. It also changes how you approach risk and opportunity. While others see one step forward, you're calculating the full trajectory. You know which moves will quietly trigger problems down the line and which actions will compound into massive gains. That's why your decisions often look disproportionate in hindsight. The results are not coming from luck or intuition, but from seeing the patterns that everyone else overlooks. The strange side effect of this skill is how it unsettles people around you. They notice your calm confidence in situations that feel unpredictable to them. They see you navigating complex chains of cause and effect effortlessly, while they struggle to handle the first ripple. It makes your presence feel like you've already read the ending of a story they're still trying to understand. Your awareness of second-order consequences doesn't just give you foresight, it gives you control. You operate in a world where most are reacting, while you are preempting. That ability to see the full sequence, the hidden forces, the quiet feedback loops, the delayed results, creates a kind of intelligence that is precise, quiet, and utterly disarming, because by the time everyone else notices, you're already several moves ahead. Number 9. You rarely feel impressed, and people feel that. Most people live their lives chasing novelty, reacting with excitement every time something shiny or dramatic appears. A new idea, a bold move, a viral trend. These things light up the room and feed their sense of awe. You don't. Your mind filters beyond the surface, automatically scanning for the underlying patterns, the recycled ideas, the familiar mechanics behind the spectacle. That means you rarely get genuinely impressed. And while this feels normal to you, It radiates outward in a way that people immediately notice. When others are gasping, cheering, or exaggerating their reactions, your calm detachment can feel almost alien. They start questioning themselves. Why isn't this person blown away? Are they missing something? Are they too cold? They don't realize that your mind is working on a completely different wavelength. You aren't dismissing what's happening. You're seeing the system behind it, understanding how it functions, and recognizing that what seems extraordinary to them is just a predictable iteration of something already known to you. This perspective gives you a subtle kind of power. People reveal themselves when they are impressed. They show their priorities, their weaknesses, and what moves them emotionally. You observe quietly, detached, and your lack of outward excitement makes it clear that you are operating on a different plane. It's not arrogance, it's clarity. You aren't tied to the emotional theatrics of the moment, which means your attention and energy are spent on things that truly matter in the long run. The effect can be disarming, even intimidating. People expect mutual excitement and validation in social spaces. When you don't provide it, they feel the gap, the quiet authority in your observation. Your unshaken demeanor suggests an understanding that runs deeper than surface-level spectacle. You've seen the mechanics, the patterns, the predictable outcomes, and it leaves you calm, while others flail in amazement. In a world obsessed with reaction, your silence signals mastery. And by rarely being impressed, you cultivate an aura of intelligence that feels rare, deliberate, and almost otherworldly, because people instinctively sense that you are operating far beyond what they can yet comprehend. Number 10. You adapt faster than social hierarchies can track. Most people move through life constrained by invisible social rules. They watch others, measure status, and adjust at a pace dictated by the system around them. You don't. Your mind operates several steps ahead, constantly updating, recalibrating, and responding to changes in real time. While everyone else is figuring out who outranks whom or who's in favor, you've already adjusted your strategy and your behavior to align with the deeper dynamics. That speed makes your presence feel unpredictable and, to some, unsettling. You see that social hierarchies aren't static. They're fluid systems of influence, expectation, and perception, constantly in motion. Most people treat them like rigid structures, reacting slowly to any shift. You, on the other hand, instinctively map the flow, anticipate changes, and position yourself where small moves carry maximum effect. That agility isn't just cleverness, it's a natural operating mode. Your awareness doesn't wait for validation from the system. It updates as reality changes, and your moves reflect that. This creates a subtle but powerful advantage. While others get caught up in rank, recognition, and approval, you are already several steps ahead, operating where the hierarchy is still forming. That makes your decisions seem effortless, even invisible, because you're not competing for positions in the expected way. You're creating leverage where no one else is looking, and by the time others notice, it's too late to catch up. The effect on people around you is uncanny. They sense you are moving differently, but they can't immediately identify why. You're not louder, flashier, or more forceful. You're just faster in your understanding and response. That speed gives you influence without the usual signals of dominance or authority. You adapt before the system even registers a change, and that creates a quiet power that feels almost untouchable. In a world obsessed with social proof and slow-moving recognition, this ability to adjust faster than hierarchies can track sets you apart, giving your intelligence a kind of invisible, unstoppable momentum. Number 11. You think in probabilities, not certainties. Most people see the world in black and white. They cling to absolutes, making decisions based on what they believe must happen or what they hope will happen. Their thinking is binary, right or wrong, success or failure, yes or no. You don't operate that way. Your mind measures likelihoods, weighs outcomes, and constantly recalibrates based on new information. Nothing is fixed, nothing is guaranteed, and that gives you a clarity most people never experience. Thinking in probabilities changes everything. While others argue over what should happen or stubbornly stick to their assumptions, you are quietly tracking possibilities. You notice patterns, assess risks, and calculate which outcomes are more likely to occur, all without being tied down by emotion or dogma. That makes your decisions faster, more precise, and often astonishingly accurate. People assume you knew it all along, but the truth is you didn't predict the future. You simply understood the odds better than anyone else. This approach also keeps you calm in chaos. While everyone else panics over worst-case scenarios or gets trapped in wishful thinking, you are already analyzing the probabilities, shifting strategies, and acting in ways that maximize advantage. You don't waste energy fearing uncertainty because uncertainty is your natural terrain. You move within it, adjusting your expectations and your actions in real time. The effect on those around you is subtle but powerful. They see you making decisions that seem effortless, anticipating outcomes they didn't even consider, and staying unshaken when situations spiral unpredictably. It's not arrogance, it's mastery over a mindset that treats reality as a dynamic system, not a static script. By thinking in probabilities, you operate in a dimension most people can't even perceive. Your intelligence doesn't rely on knowing everything or being right all the time. It relies on seeing the invisible distribution of possibilities and positioning yourself where the odds work in your favor. That skill, quiet but relentless, gives you an edge that feels almost impossible to counter, because you're not chasing certainty, you're orchestrating it. Number 12. You understand systems better than individuals, including yourself. Most people see life through the lens of personalities and individual choices. They get tangled in drama, emotions, and the whims of people around them. You don't. Your focus is on systems, the invisible networks of cause and effect that govern behavior, decisions, and outcomes. You understand that people are rarely unpredictable. They are nodes in complex systems, responding to pressures, incentives, and constraints you instinctively map. That perspective gives you a depth of understanding that feels almost impossible to those still fixated on surface-level actions. This way of seeing the world changes everything. When someone acts irrationally, you're not surprised or frustrated. You trace the hidden pressures, the feedback loops, and the rules they are bound by, and suddenly their behavior becomes logical. Not moral, not justified, just inevitable. You apply this not only to others, but to yourself. Your own decisions, impulses, and motivations are examined through the same lens, which creates a self-awareness that is functional rather than sentimental. You don't just know who you are. You know how your actions interact with every system you touch. Understanding systems allows you to predict outcomes and engineer change without relying on force, persuasion, or charisma alone. You see leverage points invisible to others, knowing where a small nudge can cascade into massive impact. While people debate personalities, ethics, or effort, you operate on influence, flow, and the mechanics of interaction. That makes your moves subtle, efficient, and far-reaching, often giving results that seem disproportionate to the effort involved. The unsettling part for others is how quiet this intelligence is. You don't announce mastery, you don't perform insight for applause. You act, observe, and adjust, and the results speak. People notice the accuracy before understanding the process, which often makes your presence feel mysterious or even intimidating. By understanding systems better than individuals, including yourself, you bypass illusions, predict consequences, and operate in a dimension most people can't see. giving your intelligence a depth and precision that feels both rare and unavoidable. Number 13, you don't chase validation because you already tested the idea internally. Most people live with a constant need for approval. Every thought, every plan, every action is filtered through the question of how others will perceive it. They seek reassurance, feedback, applause, anything to confirm that their thinking is correct. You don't. Before you speak, act, or decide, you've already run the scenario in your mind, stress-tested it, and accounted for variables most people don't even notice. By the time the world weighs in, your judgment is already complete, which makes the need for external validation feel irrelevant. This independence of thought gives you a subtle, almost imperceptible power. While others flounder, seeking consensus or permission, you operate from certainty rooted in rigorous self-assessment. People notice this calm confidence and often mistake it for arrogance or detachment, but it isn't either. You simply trust your internal evaluation more than the fluctuating opinions of the crowd. You know that validation from others doesn't create correctness. Preparation and understanding do. Not chasing validation also changes the way you present yourself. You don't over-explain, embellish, or perform to satisfy expectations. Your words are precise, your actions deliberate, and your decisions are unaffected by the approval of others. That makes you unpredictable to people who rely on social cues to gauge truth or authority. You don't bend to social pressure because the foundation of your judgment is internal, not external. The effect is quietly disarming. People around you often sense that you operate on a different level. They feel the weight of your certainty because it isn't performative. It's the product of rigorous internal logic. You're not louder, flashier, or more forceful, but your presence carries authority. By testing your ideas internally, by holding your own assessments above external noise, you move through life with clarity, precision, and efficiency. While others wait for permission to be confident, you act decisively. That independence is rare, powerful, and unnerving to anyone who hasn't yet learned to trust themselves the way you do. It's not about ego. It's about mastery over thought, and the quiet assurance that comes from knowing you've already solved the problem in your mind before it ever reaches the world. Number 14. You don't feel smarter. You feel earlier. Most people measure intelligence by knowledge, memory, or how fast someone can solve a problem. You don't experience it that way. For you, it isn't about being smarter than others. It's about being ahead of them. Your conclusions arrive before the conversation even starts, before the social cues are clear, before most people have even considered the question. You operate on a timeline that others can't perceive, and that creates a strange sense of detachment from the world around you. This feeling of arriving early makes your thinking feel effortless, even invisible. While others are still processing inputs, debating possibilities, or emotionally negotiating what's happening, you've already navigated the path forward. That's why your predictions feel uncanny to people. They see results unfold exactly as you anticipated, and it seems like you have access to information no one else possesses. But it's not supernatural. It's simply your mind connecting dots faster and further along than the average person, catching trajectories before anyone else notices the slope. Operating ahead of the curve also reshapes your relationship with time and action. You don't panic when situations change because you've already anticipated the ripple effects. You're able to act early, adjust early, and make moves that seem preemptive, even prophetic. People notice the calm authority in your actions, the way you never seem rushed, and the quiet certainty that comes from knowing the outcome before it fully manifests. The strange part is how isolating it can feel. You're not constantly trying to prove your intelligence. You're simply living in a different temporal rhythm than those around you. That can make relationships, collaborations, and even conversations feel slow, frustrating, or oddly out of sync. But that early perception is also a superpower. It gives you the advantage of foresight without needing a crystal ball, allowing you to navigate life with a clarity and precision that others can only marvel at. You don't feel smarter than anyone else. You feel like the world is moving in slow motion around you, and you've already run ahead to see where it's going. That's why people joke about you being from the future, because in a way you already are, just ahead of everyone else's timeline. The truth about this level of intelligence is that it doesn't announce itself. It doesn't scream, perform, or seek validation. It moves quietly, decisively, and with precision, operating in dimensions most people can't even perceive. It's not about knowing more facts, being faster, or showing off. It's about seeing patterns before they form, understanding systems deeper than the individual parts, anticipating consequences before they manifest, and acting with a calm authority that feels almost unnatural. It's about thinking earlier, acting smarter, and navigating the world on a timeline others can't even sense. Those who operate at this level don't just process information differently. They exist slightly out of sync with the flow of normal life, moving ahead while others are still trying to catch up. When you recognize this way of thinking, it changes the way you view intelligence itself. It's no longer about being impressive in the moment, it's about being effective in reality. The quiet confidence, the uncanny predictions, the ability to read the invisible forces shaping outcomes, all of it comes from seeing the world not as a series of isolated events, but as interconnected systems, chains of cause and effect, and probabilities that most people overlook. That is what makes this intelligence feel otherworldly. It isn't flashy, it's inevitable. And once you understand it, you can't unsee it. If this video gave you a new perspective or made you think differently about intelligence and human potential, make sure to hit that subscribe button to stay updated with more mind-expanding content. Like this video if it resonated with you, comment your thoughts or experiences below. We want to hear how your mind navigates the unseen patterns of reality, and share it with someone who you think might need to see this. Stay curious, stay ahead, and remember, the world may be moving slowly, but you now know how to move faster. Stay awakened, chosen ones.